I have the pleasure to meet Alexander Titov, who is a bassist from the group Aquarium, but also played with the Kino group, and this is a gift to him.
Да.
So we see, which was made by Evgeny Kozlov, and here we see his pictures. And of course, because he's a bass player, and it makes a little guitar, and very important, certificate of authenticity. So this is your.
And it's in this.
This is the original one, and this is the personalized.
Plus.
Okay, so I hope we will find a place to.
Yeah, of course it will. It will be my studio.
I hope so. Okay, so I'll get around on this side, and.
Thank you.
So Alexander, you just told me that you are still playing together with Aquarium, which was the first group, or that you actually. Your first group in Leningrad at that time, before you even played with Kino. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
So
I started playing in a band in 1983, and before that I was playing in this several so-called professional groups, you know, which was embarrassing for me, you know, because that was a completely different scene, and I wanted to change that, and because my classmates, my connection with Aquarium were two classmates.
who did you know?
Sasha Lepin and Dyusha Romanov. They were my classmates. That's why I was always around the band. And when they found out that I'm looking for something, they actually, first they gave me opportunity to record with them. And then after that, in summer '83, Boris actually asked me to join the band. So that's how I started playing in Aquarium. And I met Victor and many other guys. You know, I was friends with Timur Novikov before he actually became, before he actually became involved in new art. He was just, you know, friend of ours. We were all long-haired hippie guys.
Yeah. So you're talking about the end of the 70s still?
Yeah, it's the end of the 70s. So Timur was one of our friends, and he was also a hippie at that point. You know, Oleg Kotelnikov also is a very old friend from that time, for a period of time. And my friend from school, Misha Malin, he was my closest and only, I would guess, close friend of all of my life. And he actually was a turning point in my life as well, because he was the one who actually told me that I have to start, you know, learning music, playing music.
When did you start?
I started on the bass. I started when I just came back from the army, from the service in the army. So I was 21 when I started playing bass.
Had you played another string
instrument? I played guitar as a child, but I didn't think about doing anything serious. Just when I went to the army, then I decided that I want to be a musician, that I don't want to continue, you know, because I was studying in the Institute of Technology. I would be like a chemist.
Yes.
You know.
Very useful job.
Very useful, yes, I know. But not for me.
Not for me.
So yeah.
I saw on the pictures that we have in Yevgeny's archive that you played a beautiful bass instrument, bass guitar. It looks very professional on the pictures from 1984.
Yeah, the white one.
The white one, exactly.
Well, yeah, I still have it. I still play it.
You still play it?
Yeah.
How did you manage to get it?
Well, to get it, it was well, I mean, it was a big thing, obviously, because the cost of it, you know, for me, it was a very expensive instrument. It was top of the range of that particular year. And friend of mine who was, and friend of Yurik Kasparyan, who was a student in Finland, and he came for some student exchange to St. Petersburg, and they persuaded him to bring this instrument, and he brought the instrument and sold it to me just to fund his staying in St. Petersburg. Yeah, and I actually scrapped the money from all of friends of mine, and for 5 more years was paying back. Yeah. Yeah.
But it turned out that you had the right intuition to buy it.
Well, yes, it appeared to be the right choice for me, but then I understand now that it's not only intuition. It's just that you can make an instrument play. It's all in your hands and in your head and heart. It's all in you, and you can make any instrument really play. It wouldn't be as comfortable as the white one, or it will sound different as the white one, but you can still get something nice out of any instrument, because I had many instruments since then, and I think that the instrument is just that it's a proper tool. Yeah, it has some sentimental value to you, and it has some other things. It's like a beautiful piece of wood and piece of design. But without your heart or your ability, it won't play.
Is it still white, or is it?
It's yellowed.
It's yellow.
It's yellowed. Because the top coat of a lacquer, it just yellowed with time.
I see.
Yeah, and I had to change a little bit, and restore it, because, the wood actually gets better with time, but the metal gets worse, and that's why I had to change machine heads on it, because they broken at some point in Germany, when I was in Germany. Because I was touring in Germany with the band as well, and I was playing fretless there. So, yeah, many years.
Many years. As I was told, when Kino formed as a group, they needed a bass player. Is that right? And they somehow got you on a loan from Aquarium. Is this the correct interpretation?
It is. Well, I always stumble upon this interpretation, because it's not exactly correct thing. Because we met, we were all friends, and we met on several occasions. And when it came up, then I told Boris, and Boris said to me, "Yeah, of course, if you can combine, go on and play there. Yeah, I don't mind." He didn't lend me.
Yes, of course,
he didn't complain.
But you played with Kino not for too long, is this right? About 2 years? 2.5 years.
Roughly.
And musically, your style of music, what you prefer, do you feel more comfortable? Obviously, you feel more comfortable with Aquarium, or is it?
No, socially I was more comfortable with Aquarium, but musically I was actually, Kino was very experimental for me. I loved some experiments in my music. I was always trying to try different stuff. For example, I was completely obsessed with this musician Mick Karn at that point, and Mick Karn is he's a fretless bass player from the band Japan, Dave Sylvan, Japan. So his playing was very weird, and so I tried to find out how he did it. At that point there was no information about him, so I was just trying to copy what he was playing from the records,
You got the records.
Yeah, I had recordings on tapes. You know, I had some tapes with some albums, and I would try to copy that stuff, that style.
Okay.
Sometimes it was a little bit strange because I couldn't, find out all the tricks that he was using. Now it's very easy to understand because he was using all these, weird detuners on his bass, and his bass was wall. And I visited this factory, which is in Surrey here, near London. I've actually made friends with the guy who owns this factory now. So, so I guess for me now it would be much easier to find out how it's done and what he's been playing. But at that time, it actually influenced my my style immensely.
Did you consider yourself at that time, we're talking about the beginning of the 80s, as a professional, or did you still feel that you had to improve?
I never was professional, I didn't, because I'm, professionalism, it comes from education and school and, all these traditions and stuff. I was never keen on that. I never studied any tradition seriously. I was like, I like a lot of different styles of music and classical music as well, but I never studied it academically. I was in an institute, in a music institute for 1.5 years, but I dropped out because I was touring a lot. And as I understand now, any school for artist, it narrows his imagination, in a way. It makes him completely focused, and and he can explain stuff, and he can be confident, but he will be stubborn. He won't be open to any other forms of art.
This reminds me of Yevgeny Koslov saying that fortunately they didn't accept me at the Mukhina art school.
Yeah.
Otherwise I would be doing today what everyone else is doing.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's always backfires, your education.
You learned how to play by yourself?
Yes, by myself.
And improved your technique by listening to...
Yes, by listening and copying stuff and trying to, to incorporate it in whatever I was playing. So, obviously, being a self-taught musician, when you interpret stuff, you change it.
Yes.
In a way, it suits you, because you don't hear stuff as clear as well-trained professional. But you also, in this interpretation, you get further from the original and closer to what you are, I think, and in any art.
But the music you played basically was music that was originally written for the group Aquarium, for instance, or by Kino. They were not. Or did you play?
But it wasn't arranged.
Deep Purple or whatever international.
But it wasn't arranged. Whenever we have a new song, for example, Boris or Victor would bring a new song and play it on the guitar. The rest of the arrangement we would make ourselves. So, in this ending product, this is our input, how we actually felt it should be done, because no one had any idea about what we want to achieve, what end result we're going to have, because we all were like amateurs, That's why we played it, and we were hoping it will come together,
At the beginning, you just recorded your music on tapes, and then you spread them. You copied the tapes and gave them away.
I still have the tapes.
You still have the tapes?
Yes, which I actually transferred to digital, and I have the tapes, and this tapes. I gave it to Sasha as well. I mean, the digital Sasha. Yeah, I gave him the digital copies because you know it belongs to him.
Them?
He said that yes, he wants to re-release them, but the thing is that my tapes, they were master copies from the original, yeah, and they were used extensively for several years because I was copying them, and you know, for people, you know, and I actually lived on that money. I was selling them, $5 each, you know, so. The point is that the tapes are worn out, you know, but it appears to be the only left originals.
The master tapes do not exist any longer.
No one knows where it is.
Where they are.
Yeah. What's more, I can tell that Tropila, Andrei Tropila, who was recording, for example, Начальник Камчатки, you know, he had all his originals somewhere. But at some point he started losing his mind and drinking heavily, and he had a place where he kept all this. He was renting that place. He wasn't paying for several years for his accommodation, whatever it was, you know, his workshop, yeah. So they confiscated everything, including tapes, and no one knows where these tapes now. You know.
And you are talking about whom?
Trapila. He was the guy who actually recorded all of us.
Yeah.
So Boris, for example, was wiser because he managed to make digital copies of all of his albums from the originals while they were still available. Yeah. And because Victor died so young, you know, and no one actually cared about the catalog at that moment, you know. So everything went astray, you know.
You played, but then you stopped playing with Kino in 85?
April 86.
86.
Yeah.
Did you ever return to concerts with them? I mean, you met them on stage, obviously, at the Pop Mekhanika concerts.
Yeah, we still, I think we still were friends. It was a little tension between me and Gustav, you know. But still, at the end of his life, we actually spoke a couple of times on the phone and we wanted to meet, but he was ill. So this way we didn't meet with him. But I think, you know, Victor took it very hard at first. He was very, very upset.
That you left?
Yeah, when I left. I don't know, I didn't have much of a choice, have I? Because I started playing in Aquarium at first, you know, and then I played with Kino several years, and I couldn't combine. I had to choose, you know. And Aquarium was my generation, and Kino was 6 years younger, you know. So at that point, they had slightly different sort of tusovka, you know, than I had.
What you call social life is close.
Yeah, a different thing. And so I think morally it was the right thing to do, you know. I couldn't do it any other way. Difficult choice, you know, and sometimes you think what could have been if you did it the other way.
If you did it the other way, right.
Yeah. But then again, you know.
But then you wouldn't be playing with Aquarium today, probably.
Yeah. Or maybe I would.
Or maybe you would. How many members from the, when there's an Aquarium gig today, how many members from the old staff are still present?
Just Boris and me.
Just the two of you?
Yeah, just two of us.
Yeah.
You know, cello player Seva, like, he stopped playing in 1987, and he since then he opened this club in St. Petersburg, Tam Tam Club.
I know, yes.
Yeah, so it was a big scene, and he actually grown a lot of bands in that club. So thanks to him, he was like it was the biggest alternative scene, musical scene in St. Petersburg in the 90s. Yeah, and after that, you know, he still writes music now, but he works as a stage manager in A2 club, which is the biggest actually live venue, one of the biggest live venues in St. Petersburg, club venues.
Let me return to the performance you said that was important to you, the Helsinki performance of Pop Mekhanika in 1995, and you said it was the last one that you participated, but also it was one of the very last ones, and it was, if we talk about the way it was staged, the dramaturgy, everything, it was of course outstanding. It was not a spontaneous thing, it was quite well organized, and there were rehearsal, am I right?
Yeah, it was a rehearsal, and there was also, you know, it was a lot of different costumes and everything else, which we brought in a truck from St. Petersburg, and these costumes were property of Len Film, and Sergey was, you know, he had an agreement with them, so they lent it to him. So he took it with us. We went there on bus. It was very funny, the whole trip there and back, and everyone was with the families. And I remember, you know, and Sergey was with his little son Fedya, you know, and I was with my wife, and we were like, it was very, very nice thing to remember.
Like going for a big holiday
exactly,
together?
all together, yes. It's like magical mystery tour.
I see. Because the perception of I know the description, I know some fragments, of course, of the movie, and then I know the description of it in Kuznetsov's book, but it seems a bit, in my eyes, exaggerated. Some effects, maybe he wasn't present. The author
yes,
wasn't
of course.
So
he was just making it
bigger,
making it up,
even bigger than it was.
I actually tried to read some of his books. He makes stuff up, and he uses all the rumors, you know, instead of proper information. You know, maybe he is a good journalist, but he's not a true person, you know, who actually gives the true facts or describes the whole situation the right way. He likes to blow the things up a little. You know?
It's quite funny to read it, but of course, But I'm curious about the fact, because I know that in this year of his life, Kuryokhin got quite involved with the readings of Aleister Crowley, and I've done some research about it, and this came from Alexander Dugin basically, but not alone. And so he really had this idea of transforming everything, and maybe with effects on stage. But if you look at the Helsinki film, it looks more like pure fun, while when you look at the Petersburg performance with the speeches, it's a bit more...
well, I don't know. I have to look at this Petersburg performance, because you see, everyone tells about Dugin, involvement with Dugin and Limonov and everything else, you know. But for me, Sergey was the same Sergey always. Maybe he was involved with these guys, but it actually passed me completely. I didn't meet any one of them. I just remember that one particular thing, that when he done this program on TV, when he called Lenin a mushroom. That was the only thing that for his political sort of statement that actually still with me. You know, all this involvement with Dugin, everyone's saying it's a dark side, he went to the dark side and then he paid the price and died. Bullshit. You know?
I understand, but I did read some of his comments he wrote for magazines in 1994 in 99, in 95, and in early 96 about his vision, how the world should be and how the revolution should be made up, and how the bourgeois, of course, should, how to combat them and so on. So there was obviously in his talks and in his writing there was this
influence.
Was this influence, can't be denied.
Could be, yeah, that's right. But he was always very sort of увлекающийся, very
entertaining, charismatic.
No, not charismatic, and he was charismatic. He was entertaining. No, I mean, he would like to try stuff. He was very exploring. And that was one of his ways to sort of to try and explore some other sides.
I see.
In a way.
Don't you think that? I mean, that's because I read a lot, and I try to. It's always difficult when you try to make up your mind about someone that you hardly know. Okay, so I hardly knew him, and you know that many people were just completely charmed by him, and he was an excellent musician, and he was very experimental, and he did a lot for the Leningrad scene. So you bear this in mind, and then see the other side, and try to somehow figure out a person without ambiguities, which there were, of course. But it seemed to me that maybe at one point he wanted to do something serious, something that would have a big impact on society. As he said, that the biggest show now is politics, and maybe was not satisfied with the role that music could have in a society.
It might be, but we can just guess at the moment, because we see, in fact, he didn't achieve any steps, in that direction, except this gig in St. Petersburg that you told me now, with the speeches. It's the thing is that. It might have happened if he would persuaded and followed that road for several years, because he, to do this he had to change his image completely, and he would have to be not just an entertainer, but politician, and try to to earn some votes, from people around, to build a following, all this crap. So on that political platform, I don't know if he would be successful, really. I doubt it.
Maybe he wanted to be a magician.
He might have, because obviously part of his performance was always connected with magic, with all this, with tricks. He was a trickster. That definitely is.
But what did you experience on stage as you were playing with him in Helsinki? Was it just pure joy? You just enjoyed being there?
Oh, it was very hot. I was dressed as a hangman, all covered in this big velvet, coat and hat. And I had just holes for eyes. So I was sweating inside. It was very difficult, but obviously funny. And from the outside, from the footage, you can see that it looks hilarious, the whole performance there, completely mad,
And musically speaking?
Musically speaking, it's actually very rough sometimes, and you know what? Because I have it on my YouTube channel, together with all these Kino clips that I have there, and some Aquarium, and all of the guys who actually look at that channel, some of them look at this at this concert as well. And Kino fans, they don't get Pop Mekhanika at all. They said, what the crap is that? They don't get it. They don't get that fun.
So he was probably the only person who was able to
pull together this scale of event
for some
Yeah.
period in time.
Yeah, because everyone, as you said earlier, everyone liked him, loved him. He was the favorite of our company, of our friends of ours, for many of us. And that's why when he was calling anyone, no one asked any questions. Everyone were happy to do this. So normally we would have, before the Pop Mekhanika, we would have just a couple of hours rehearsal on a day, in the morning, with a sequence of acts, so that we'll get it.
Did you go to Liverpool and to Stockholm?
I didn't go to Liverpool. Sasha Lepin.
And
he
Stockholm you weren't.
And Stockholm, I didn't go to Stockholm with him. It was that year that I was in America, in States, with Boris, with his project. You remember that, Radio Silence, he was releasing it on CBS, and I was with him, and we supported it with a tour. We toured the world with that. So I was away from the country for most of that year. I came back at the end of '89, and that's when I started touring constantly with Sergey. So that was a couple of years when we went together to Berlin. We've been to Amsterdam.
Ljubljana?
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Because I know I have more or less a chronicle of activities.
Italy, Amsterdam,
Berlin.
So
the focus was on the years between '89 and '91, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of touring abroad.
Yeah.
And then there are few Pop Mekhanika performances.
Yeah.
In Petersburg and abroad, there are not many. And then we have these two important, one in '95. So I would say that basically Pop Mekhanika covers the '80s, the Perestroika period. And
it started, from '84, and I was on one of the first performances at this Eric Grashevsky studio, in near Chernyshevskaya. So there, it was like there is, I think, a footage of that.
At the Eric Grashevsky, I know about the university, the Eric Grashevsky, that was the theater performances of the new artists. Are you sure that there was a Pop
Or maybe
Mekhanika?
it's just photos.
Yeah, the photos.
I think it's just photos, from that one.
Yeah. And then he did a collaboration about which I talked yesterday, Insect Culture, with the new composers, which I like quite a lot because I'm a fan of the new composers' sound collages and voice collages.
Yes, they actually, you know that Yurik just performed with
Alachov.
Right a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and Alachov came to Berlin in November.
Yeah, I've seen the footage of that.
Yeah.
And he also played me when I was in St. Petersburg. Whenever I go there, I actually meet with him, with Yurik, and he played me some of the tracks. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. Well, new composers. Yeah, they always had this sort of funny madness.
In the '80s, but then although we talked to Igor Verichev lately, and he says he's now working only on sounds. Phonemes, no words, because there are too many words in the world.
Oh yeah. Well,
so
in a way,
he's right.
You can't agree with that. Yeah. Okay.
I would still like you to ask you maybe a last question or some last questions, because you have so much experience of so many years of playing with Aquarium, but also of following what is going on in Russia probably. But what is how would you say the development, strictly the musical development of the Aquarium? How would you describe it? Or is it still someone who came to a concert, say, in the '80s and who goes to concert today? Would he experience the same thing, or would he say, like Bob Dylan started playing with an electric guitar, and they say, people said, that's not it anymore?
Yeah, well, people always say different things about that, because Boris he plays a lot of different styles. Yeah, he tries to combine, like for example, some Latina, and then he plays some reggae, and next he plays some rock music. You know, he's mixing with styles a lot. Yeah, and he had periods when he was just playing reggae. You know, for example, a couple of years when he was completely obsessed with it, and he was feeling that to be very important. But then it's also nowadays it's our concert, which is like 4 hours long.
4 hours.
Yes, we play for 4 hours. Yeah, and I would say 60% of it, roughly, is old songs. You know, from the 80s, which are still very relevant today, and people raving about them because they have incredible poetry, you know, images.
Do they sing along? Probably.
Yes,
they sing along with
they
you.
Do.
Yes.
They do, because this is his heritage, you know, his golden heritage, you know. And other 40% is maybe 20% of it is new songs, which actually are waiting to sort of to win someone over, yeah. And some of the songs from the period of the 90s, which we play as well, they have some definite flavor as well. You know, for me, they are not too close to my heart, because my heart was with Aquarium lyrics and Aquarium music was mostly in the 80s, you know. And contemporary stuff, you know, it touches me, but touches in a different way. It's a different thing.
What was the strong point of the 80s then?
You mean in general, or for Boris, for Aquarium?
For you, feelings towards Aquarium, and maybe the feelings towards Kino as well, because they were a band of the 80s.
Well, the 80s
what was specific?
The 80s, I don't want to sound too nostalgic, you see, because I don't like this nostalgia thing. It was something special at that period of time. We were lucky that we all experienced that several years, that decade, because that decade in St. Petersburg was very special. It was absolutely, undoubtedly, you know, magical time, you know, for all of us, for artists, for musicians, for everyone from alternative way of art, you know. Alternative art bloomed in St. Petersburg in that decade.
Yeah.
So we were happy, and we were chosen ones because we knew each other, you know, for many years. We were all grown up together. So it was a very close, small community of people. Later, you know, more and more people from rural cities, they were coming to St. Petersburg because it was very special for them. For example, Butusov, Shevchuk, you know, all these, Bashlachov, you know, performers and songwriters, they were coming to St. Petersburg because they wanted to, you know, to be part of this scene. But initially, it was like maybe 100 of us, and we were all friends. We would meet in Saigon, you know, we didn't have mobile phones, and we meet in Saigon every day, you know, for a cup of coffee and news, you know. And whenever anything happened, you know, we would sort of go stroll somewhere, you know, do some stuff. No one had to work seriously. That was actually also a very important thing, you know. We were all free as birds.
It's interesting that you say 100 persons, because I tried to, I wrote a short description of the of that period in one of my articles, and I say that not more than 200, but this has to be verified. So, but I'm even more generous than you are with 200.
Oh yeah, well, I'm exaggerating, I mean, diminishing.
Yeah, but
the thing
it's
is
about 100 or 200. It means it's a rather small
about
circle
this
of
stuff.
people.
It's very closed community, very small, but very dear in a way that you know, it all went ballistic at some point. And we were so happy and very proud of it as well, because comparing to Moscow, for example, where nothing was happening at all, you know, they also had this rock laboratory, you know, which tried to, you know, to grow some alternative music scene in Moscow, but it didn't work, you know. It was the bands were, you know, it was like one band in Moscow, which was, you know, the Zvuki Mu, you know, that band, and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And maybe my very last question: have you seen the film Leto yet? Have you seen it? Or?
Oh yes, I've seen the film Leto,
So what is
and
your
it's
opinion?
it's just how do you put it?
Is it because it's
It's just vanilla, you know. That's
vanilla?
it. Yeah.
Okay, it presents the very early 80s, or at least that is what
Well,
the director
Yeah,
says.
they try to
try
present the early 80s, but the thing is that it's very sort of, it's done with a hipster mentality, you know,
Yeah.
and it's very narrow-minded, you know, approximate. Nothing actually works, and I don't like the guy who plays Tsoi.
Yeah.
You know, I think that Korean bloke who plays Tsoi, he didn't get it at all. You know? So. I'm not saying that this film is useless or it is shit. I'm saying that this film doesn't represent us, and I'm saying that this film might be useful for younger generations to open something for them and try to dig into that period of time, you know, which is helpful. Yeah, but nothing close to the truth.
I know that Boris Grebenshikov also.
Well, he was even more drastic about this, because obviously he's seen the he's seen the screenplay. He read the screenplay, and when he read it, he just said that it's just it's amazing. It's you know, it's not even close to the dialogues that our community would have at that period of time, you know, because we all had our words, you know, our slang, everything, you know, and they had to keep it if they wanted that to be close to what happened there, you know. Otherwise it's all, you know, it's like it's a cheap interpretation.
Yeah. I must admit, I haven't yet seen it, just some fragments, but immediately I saw that this doesn't look like the authentic 80s. I mean, even
it's not in authenticity. It's you know, they have these musical moments there as well, you know, when someone on a train starts singing like "I Am a Passenger," you know, this Iggy Pop song, you know, and stuff like that, you know, that I didn't dig it. I didn't buy it. That's the right
you know better.
Yeah.
Okay, Alexander Titov, thank you very much for your kindness and for your patience, and I hope we'll keep in touch, and I hope that you will be able to do many more performances with your band, and
I hope so,
and we will try to keep the archive, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.